Hey, it's Alex
and Bella
from Let's Not Sugarcoat It, a podcast where each week we bring you real, raw, and unfiltered conversations.
Our guests share their life's journeys in entrepreneurship, relationship, parenthood, and much, much more
in an authentic and raw way where no one sugarcoats life's messes and successes.
Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of your favorite podcast apps, and tune in every Wednesday for new episodes.
Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Tees. With our inspirational tees, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Tees. Get some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Tees at dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. Hi guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Earnest James. And on my podcast, my guests and I discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. To deal with their problems, heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. So check out our podcast. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or even on Audible. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel at Deal to Heal with E. James Podcast. Until then, see you soon. Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. We believe that the relationship between a dad and daughter is one of the most important relationships in a woman's life. Our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world and give love and support to all of our dads and their daughters. Let's get to it. Let's tune in. Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and we believe that the relationship between the father and daughter is one of the most important relationships in a woman's life. Therefore, our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world and to give love and support to all of our dads and their daughters. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you listen, like, subscribe, and share to the podcast on all of our social media platforms. And as the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, also make sure that you check out our YouTube channel. Definitely want you guys to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We actually share a YouTube channel with our partner podcast, the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. So when you go to YouTube and you look up the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, you will also find the playlist for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, which we are on right now. Also, I want to tell you guys how you can win $100 from the podcast, but you got to stay until the end of the podcast in order to get that information. All right. So as you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast. And the way that we keep bringing you guys amazing episodes is by bringing you products that you can purchase in order to help support us. And so our product of the week, if you can't see it, I have it on right now. We do now have podcast merch, right? We have podcast merch. So we do have our Girl Dad Discussions podcast t-shirts. You can get one at Deal to Heal Tees. That's Deal, the number 2, healtees.com, which is our inspirational t-shirt line, which you can also find other things that we have there, our other inspirational shirts that we have there, including the Girl Dad Discussions podcast tees that we have now, and the Deal to Heal podcast with E. James podcast tees are also there. So those are our product of the week, our amazing t-shirts that we have now, our podcast t-shirts that we have, as well as our other inspirational tees at Deal to Heal Tees. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. Make sure you guys go there and check it out. All right. So today, just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest, Mr. Willcox. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well. How about yourself?
I am good, man. I'm good. First of all, let me say thank you for being on, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. And so I want you to let you know that up front. So thank you for being on, man.
Oh no, I appreciate you having me on. It's a big deal for me. So as I, when you came on my show, so as I said, this is a big deal to me because this is me branching out. So
yeah. So for all the listeners who don't know, we'll let you get into who you are and what it is that you do in a second. But one of the things that he does is he has a podcast called Mediocre Dads. And I had the privilege of being on that podcast, and we had a great conversation. So, to all my listeners who are listening, make sure that you definitely go to YouTube and watch it. And you also can find it on your other podcast listening platforms, but it's Mediocre Dads is the name of it. And I was on there, Earnest James, as a guest. We had a great discussion, and we had to kind of cut it short. And I was like, look, I got to have you on my podcast because we're going to be on here for like 2 hours.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
So before we get into part 2 of our discussion that we were having on your podcast, do me a favor, introduce yourself to my listeners and tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
All right. Well, I am Queon Willcox, but I go by Q because I know most people can't say my name. I'm just going to be honest with you. I know it's Queon, but when you look at it, you don't see Queon. So I get it. But anyway, I go by Q. I am the host of Mediocre Dads. And Mediocre Dads is it's a podcast in which I want to get to more stories for dads and to let them know they're not alone. Right. And so don't get me wrong, we all go through trials and tribulations in life, and then especially as dads, and we like to hold it in. But, as dads, I don't think men at first, we weren't taught how to handle our emotions. But then when we become dads and we have children, we definitely do more of that keeping it in than letting it out, if you will. So our kids can see that and grow and develop. But yeah, Mediocre Dads was just kind of a thing that when I became a dad, I wanted to do it. It was important for me to do it because, and we'll get into it obviously in the show, but like it was important, especially how my upbringing was. But that's what I do on the side. Mediocre Dads is my podcast. Is the thing I do on the side for fun for me personally. But then also on my day-to-day life, I am an active duty Army soldier, so I go to work every day in the Army. Love or hate it, you know what I mean? So it's I've been doing it for over 10 years now, so that's a blessing. I'm very fortunate because it gives me all the things I do have in my life right now. So and then most importantly, if you will, I am a dad of 2 beautiful daughters, and one is 5 going on 6, and the other one is 1 going on 2, but she turns 2 in October, so we got some time. But she is in a stage where she is angry all the time. So
angry, okay.
Well, she throws these fists, she throws herself on the ground, and she's just kind of like rolling around, and it was like, oh, and she's found her voice. So screaming is her thing. Like at any point, you might hear it in the background, her screaming, because I don't know why she just does it, and you're like, all right, calm down. She just doesn't want to take it. She doesn't want to listen. So yeah.
Okay. So, well, first of all, I want to say thank you for your service.
Thank you for serving.
I did not serve, but I wanted to. At one point, my dad is a vet, and awesome. 2 of my sons are vets. They did serve. I wanted to be a Marine, And not so much for the Marine. I just wanted the suit. You know what I mean?
Oh, they have the best uniforms. They do have the best uniforms.
Yeah, I wanted the suit and the sword, man. I seen it when I was little, and I was just like, I want that. And then by the time I got old enough to go, I was like, yeah, I don't think so. So I changed my mind. But you mentioned your upbringing, and I know when we were on your podcast, we kind of hit on it a little bit. So I wanted to bring it up to ask you a little bit, tell us a little bit about your upbringing, because I wanted to ask you, do you believe that because of how you were raised, how did you think that affects even your parenting style, as a father? So tell us a little bit about just how you were raised, and your whole family dynamics, and then we'll get into from there.
Okay. Yeah. No. So I was adopted when I was 2 years old. So I have a twin brother. So me and him were adopted when we were 2 years old, and it was different. And why it was different, and because we were adopted by a white family, and so our upbringing growing up, it was very different from what a lot of people are used to or accustomed to. So, and what I mean by that is when I got older, that's when I really started to notice how different me and my brother were from other people, like especially other Black men, how different we were, right? Yeah. And how we carried ourselves. And it wasn't necessarily we carried ourselves better than they did, or they carried themselves better than we did, but it was clearly there was a difference. There was a difference in our upbringing and how we spoke, how we articulated ourselves, whatever the case might be. But that played a huge role into me being a dad now, because, growing up, I remember I would cry if I got in trouble, whatever. I'm just throwing a fit, right? When I was very young. And all I would do was like, I want my mom, I want my dad, right? And talking about my real parents, or my real parents, my birth parents. Yeah. And I remember just kind of throwing that fit and just keep saying that. And then I remember I would think about like, well, this Christmas they're going to surprise us and they're going to come pick us up, right? And that was the thought, because I will speak for myself, I won't speak for my brother, but at least for what I wanted was to kind of know my parents and know why I was the way I was, if that makes sense. And so that never happened, but still my parents, who I call my parents now, they raised us, they took care of us, and they did an excellent job. And so now fast forward to me being an adult and a grown man, and I have my own daughters. And one of the first things that I thought was of like, man, I realized that my dad I didn't have to come from my dad for him to be my dad. And and the lessons he taught me weren't lessons of this is what he would only teach his birth son, but these are the lessons that any son should learn and should know. And so I was really thankful for that, because it definitely led into part of me being who I am, such as joining the military. So I joined the military because my dad, he brought it up to us when I was in my junior year in high school, and me and my brother laughed at him. This is one of the only few times. This is the only few times that I ever laughed in my dad's face, as if what he said was just absurd. And fast forward to now, and I joined the Army, and I've been in it for over 10 years now. And so, I always tell people, it's kind of his fault I'm here, but it worked out and that's what was supposed to happen. But ultimately, to answer your question, yes, how my upbringing in that aspect of being adopted plays a huge role in how I parent my daughters now. One being that the importance of dads is just, and you said it in your intro and all and everything in especially last episode when we spoke, is how important dads are and the impact that they have. Because I think if me and my brother weren't adopted and we came up in the system, like I call it, right? I don't know where we'd be, and I don't know what I would be doing. You know what I mean? Right. And so it's weird to think about in a sense, because I'm like, man, where would I be if I didn't have that? And so being a dad for me meant so much more, because I never wanted my kids, before I had kids, I never wanted my kids to ever go without knowing who their dad was. regardless of whatever potentially could happen between me and mom or whatever the case might be. I never wanted to grow. I never wanted to be, an older man sitting there thinking to myself like, damn, I wonder what my kids that I had that I don't even know think of me or whatever the case might be. So that's just, I don't know. It's really important to me. I don't know. It's hard to put in words at times, but that is just how important it was to me that when I became a dad, that I was going to do everything better than my birth dad.
Yeah. And I wanted to hear you talk about that a little bit, because I know on your podcast, we kind of dove into my story as being a stepdad, and so I kind of look at stepdad and, or should I say step parents and then foster parents, on the same level, because we chose to, be your parent, what I mean? When we had a choice, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that's important that we, just at least have a discussion about those narratives, because they do exist. My family has always been involved with systems. Even growing up with my mom, we didn't necessarily adopt, like legally adopt, but how you're like, all right, just come stay with me. It was a lot of those situations, you know what I mean? Where, the home just wasn't home, and it was like, all right, come stay with me, and so my mom was always that person. And then, I got family members who did adopt, and then a whole lot of family members that does like temporary foster care or what they call it, emergency placement and things like that. So we're all in that whole system, and so we've always played a part in it. And so I just, as a father, and a parent, whether you're a foster parent or adopted parent or step parent, whatever, I just know the importance, like you said, of fathers, not just fathers, but the mothers too, but especially those that had a choice, So it's one thing when you have a biological child, I won't say you don't have a choice, but you're supposed to be there. Like, that's your spot. We had the whole conversation on your podcast. And so listeners, the guys and girls that's listening, you definitely want to go check out that episode that we did on Mediocre Dads, where I was the guest. So we got into a lot of the step parents and all of that. But you guys want to definitely check that out. But what I was saying, I just think that's so important, because you have people that didn't have to, just plain and simple. They didn't have to, but yet and still they took the time to choose to love, someone else's child as their own, and that child became their own. You know what I mean? So before we transfer to your children, I know you mentioned you and your brother were adopted. Did you have any other siblings from your parents?
Yeah. So my mom, she was married previously before my dad, and so she had a boy and a son and a daughter, and then my parents got married, and they didn't have any kids together. I'm pretty sure, because my dad told me he had a vasectomy early, like when in his late 20s, and I guess that's just what he was doing. I don't know. So they didn't have any kids together, but that's ultimately led to the phase of like, okay, hey, they're going to adopt. So they adopted me and my twin brother, and then when we got older, they adopted my older brother. He was 10 years older than we were, and so ultimately there was 5 of us. But by the time I was like 10, my mom's two son and daughter, they were already at the house because they're grown. So like my older brother, he's in his 40s now, and my sister, she's almost 40. So they're I don't want to say they're old, but they're older than me. So like they're like, they weren't really in the picture, but they were there, but they weren't there, if that makes sense. Okay. So it was just mainly myself, my brother, me and my twin brother, and then my older brother, because we were all 3 were adopted. So
okay. Was your older brother, was he a teenager when he was adopted?
Yeah, so they adopted him when he was 12, and so he came. They adopted him from a foster home, and so I don't know. I mean, I know you mentioned your family and being a part of that system. I don't know if you yourself have ever been to a foster home, and kind of just not in a weird way, but just kind of watched, kind of see the dichotomy of a foster home, especially when there's like 5 to 10 boys in that house. but I remember going to the house, picking him up, and it was a nice house, but you could just tell, like, for some of those boys, it was a home that they had, but it wasn't home, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it was a
Yeah.
home,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
wasn't their home. And you could, I don't know how to explain it, but it was kind of like you could just look into their eyes and you could just tell, like, they were happy to be there, but ultimately you could tell they wished that they were in a home that they could really call home. And so,
Yeah.
it was kind of, I would even say, like, and them seeing us and coming with my parents, knowing we were adopted, obviously, right? But then still seeing, like, the happiness and joy, and then hearing us call them mom and dad, and then being like, oh wow, like, so, like, they're like, that's what it looks like. That's like
Yeah.
that's the desired end state right there, right? If we could just have that, that would be great. Unfortunately, most people, when they're going for adoption, they don't adopt teenagers.
Yeah.
It's primarily because, when you become 18, you're considered an adult. And it's not to say that parents do it for the money, but it definitely helps. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, you're parents, so you understand, like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not cheap. You know what I mean? So then, and adopting is not cheap either. And so, going through the whole process, and then they're 18 and they're officially out of the system and no longer, they're now societies, and they have to go figure it out like everybody else. So most people don't adopt teenagers. So my parents did want to adopt a teenager because they didn't want to start over because they were older.
Right.
And so they adopted my brother, and he had a hard time transitioning. Right. And so, because he would spin in and out of the foster system, because his mom was present in his life, but then his mom wasn't present in his life, and then his mom was present, but then she wasn't. It was kind of a back and forth for a long time. And then when my parents officially adopted him, that was it. She was no longer present there. And so you could just tell, like I said, it was a hard time transitioning, and he had a lot of bad habits that he carried with him throughout life, not necessarily knowing that they were bad habits, but my parents trying to better him and say, like, hey, these are the rules of the house. Like, you are our son. We see you as our son, and we love you, and you may not love us. We understand that yet, but, like, we want to be your parents, and we want you to accept us as your parents. And so we're going to treat you as we would treat any of our sons. And I think that's a lot for a young man to hear when they've never heard that before. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I know you asked me about my siblings, but yeah, no. So that was that kind of transition for him, and what what kind of went through. But that was our kind of our household, what it looked like.
Right. Yeah. And the reason why I asked that, because you said that he was older than you guys, and for that very reason, that people usually don't adopt teenagers. That's why I asked, because I kind of did the math in my head and kind of
yeah.
And so because again, I want to point these things out because I think it's important, and then also to give props to, your parents for not only adopting, two, but then going back and adopting again, and who happened to be a teenager. And so, just those dynamics are, a needle in a haystack for people to do that. If you get one, if you adopt one, that's like, okay, but then you adopt two, that's twins, and then you adopt a teenager too. So I definitely want to give them their props and their honor for, taking out that, to sharing themselves with you guys when they didn't have to, but to open up their hearts and to do that. So that's why I asked those questions, because I want to, give them their flowers for that.
Oh yeah, no, I'm an open book. So I've never been ashamed of my parents, or never will, and I'm always open to share, about my parents, because, like you said, I don't, like, I guess I don't, for anybody who's never seen the foster system, been in the foster system, or kind of just heard about adoption but never been a part of that, like, the willingness a person has to have to say, hey, I want to go adopt somebody, and then to go through the process, because like, you're adopting children. These are kids. So, like, the state wherever you're we were in Las Vegas, they're going to scrutinize your life from top to bottom, everything in your life. They're going to look through it, and then they're also going to go and they're going to inspect your house. and they have to make sure your house it meets all the safety inspections, if you will, to house these kids. So like that's what the state's doing for adoption, and most parents are not even doing that in their normal house. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like the willingness that you have to allow these strangers to come in your home and basically tell you like, yeah, that's not up to code. You need to get rid of that. Can't have that. These plugs right here, yeah, that's kind of looking like a dangerous situation right here. You need to figure that out. Like, you know what I mean? Like just all these things. Then you're just sitting there just like, that's $1,000. That's another $1,000. That's about $500. Okay. Yep. Check. And when you coming back here about a month? Sounds good. You know what I mean? Like, man. So like, anyway, yeah. I props to my parents. I love my parents so much, and like the appreciation I have for them is just it's out there, and the love I have for them, truthfully, like that. I tell people all the time, like those are my parents. They will always be my parents. And there's, my birth parents may have, they may come into my life, but they'll never be able to replace the ones that raised me, that took the time, that were there for my temper tantrums, that were there for me getting in trouble, that were there for me when I got married, were there for me when I had my kids, were there for me when I needed money. All these things in life that parents are supposed to be there for, they were they were it, and they're still there, and they're still present, and it's just you can't feel that. You know what I mean? You can't. Right. They can't. No one else can fill that void. They filled it. So.
All right. So definitely want to give them their props. So we're going to jump right into the meat and potatoes of this thing. As we know, you are a girl dad with two daughters. So first question, what are your daughters' names?
My oldest is Nevaeh, and then my second is Eden.
Okay. So I have to make sure I ask that, because in like the earlier episodes, we'll just get in, we'll be talking and like we didn't even say your daughter's name.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so let's go all the way back to the beginning. So how did you even find out you were going to be a dad? In both cases. So of course, after the first one, you were already a dad, but then how did you find out you were having another child? So just going back there, how was that even came about?
So my first daughter, Nevaeh, we were so kind of background. So I got back from Afghanistan on Valentine's Day in 2017. And the whole time I was there for 9 months, and my wife had been talking about like, well, we should have a baby. And I'm like, oh, I don't know about all that. You know what I'm saying? But if any of your, matter of fact, your two sons, because they'll totally relate to this. If you ask them, I think you said they had kids, but if they ask them if they know what a deployment baby is, they will 100% know what I'm talking about when I say a deployment baby. I came back on Valentine's Day. We're all adults here. We all know and understand what that means. And so, at the time I was like, I don't want kids, but then I wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to stop it. So fast forward, we have been trying up to that, basically from the time I got back till we found out. And so I remember how we found out. So we were going to the movie theater because we were going on a date because it was our anniversary. And so this is September 14th of 2017. And so we're going to go on a date for our anniversary, going to see a movie. Kind of, it is what it is. That's what we could afford at the time. And I remember her kind of a few days before being like, I don't feel well, all these things, all the signs were there. So I was like, just take a pregnancy test. In the back of my mind, I'm like, there's no way she's pregnant. We've been trying for this long. It's not going to happen. She's not pregnant right now. So before we go see the movie, she takes the test. And so like, I'm sitting outside on the couch, just waiting for her to like, I don't know she's taking the test. I didn't know she was taking the test. I was just figuring she was, finishing and ready, and then we were gonna head out. So then she calls me. She's like, Queon, and I'm like, but like, when women are crying and they're trying to talk loudly, like that's what it was. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, I'm thinking something happened. She saw spiders. She hurt herself. I go back and I'm like, well, what's up? And she's just crying, and I'm like, what's up? Like, I don't understand what's going on right now. And like, she shows me the thing, and I'm like, so up to that point, I've never seen one in like real life. I've seen in the movies how they show them, they're all getting excited. Never seen it. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, So I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't know what I'm looking at here. and she's like, she hands me the box and I go, oh. It's like it all clicked. It just all clicked for me. And so that's how I found out about my first daughter. We almost missed the movie. And I don't know how we still went and saw the movie. Yeah. Even though when we just found out, like we found out and we had like 10 minutes of like, oh wow, this is great. Got in the car and went and saw the movie. That was kind of you know what I mean? Like we were young, we didn't truly understand how to process it. And so that's how we found out for my first one. And then my second daughter, so actually my wife had a miscarriage in between my first and my second daughter's being born. And so that was really hard for us. But then we found out we found out she was pregnant again, and that brings my second daughter, Eden. I was like, so we were very nervous. We were nervous throughout the whole thing. And I found, I'll never forget how she told me too. So this time I wasn't privy to the information, what her taking the test, of her feeling the symptoms, whatever the case might be. So I show up back home and from work, and I'm tired. I sit down, and my daughter, my oldest daughter, Nevaeh, at this time has a shirt on that says Big Sister. Now, I haven't even recognized this as Big Sister. I'm not even seeing it, right? So I like give them both a hug, kiss. I sit down, get ready at the table. Both of them are like staring at me. They said like all of 5 words. So like that should have been like my cue of like something's going on. They're waiting for me for something. And so finally we're kind of eating. Now at this point we start eating, and I kind of peeped the shirt, and I'm like, okay, that's a little strange. Not a Big Sister, but all right. Maybe it's just a shirt she got. So I kind of look at my wife and I look at her, and I'm like, so what's with the shirt? And she's like, and finally both are like, she's like, and my daughter, she's like, in her little baby, she's like, I'm gonna be a big sister. And I was like, oh, is that what we're doing right now? And she's like, yeah, you didn't notice the shirt? I was like, well, I did. I just figured, like, I was like, my mind was work. I came home. I didn't even think about like, oh, this is what it is. So she brought out like the test and everything. And I was like, oh my goodness, congrats. We, did our thing. And I was really happy and really excited about that. I will say though, when Nevaeh was born, we were going to wait. We were going to do a gender reveal. Mm-hmm. And, I remember going to the doctor, and finally, I think it was 18 weeks where you can actually do the scan. Yeah. And so she's like, hey, do you guys want to know the sex of the baby? And we're like, nah, we're good. Just don't tell us. Well, this lady was like clueless, and she's gone to doing a scan. She's like, oh my gosh, you guys are going to have such a beautiful daughter. And like, she just thought she was going to be able to skip over it. Like, she didn't say it. Like, we didn't tell her not to tell us, but she thought she was going to skip over it and just keep going. We're both looking at each other, and she goes, oh, you guys said you didn't want to know. I'm so sorry. We can pretend. I was like, we can't pretend. Right, we already said it. We already know. It's in our heads now. Oh man. And so for Eden, my wife didn't tell. We did an actual proper gender reveal because, of course, military. I was getting ready to deploy again, and so we did a proper gender reveal. Her sister had all the information. I had wholeheartedly believed it was going to be a boy. Wholeheartedly. And if it was a boy, I would not be having any more kids. I'm just gonna be honest. I was like, I'm done. So we popped the balloon, and I'm ready for the blue confetti. Like, in my mind, I've already made it up. Like, yep, it's a boy. This is it. Dream come true. And it's pink. And I naturally, my instinct reaction, I go like, oh. So they have video. When my daughter, when Eden, she gets older and she sees the video of the gender reveal, she's gonna see dad. Pink confetti's coming down on me like this. Oh my goodness! Like, I was just, I wanted a boy, and I wasn't upset. It's a blessing. I love my daughters. They're so great. They're, and being a girl dad is an experience within itself. But like I said, I did want the boy, and I still do. But I do believe that the Lord's gonna bless me with the boy here. With our next kid, whenever that comes. So,
right. Okay. So tell me, what was your experience? And I know both of your daughters are still younger, but as infants, what was that experience for you? You know, bringing these infants home, infant daughters. You know, at that point, to having to raise them and really just kind of come to terms, like, you know what, I'm responsible for this little girl. You know, how was that experience for you?
Fear. I was straight afraid, nervous, and you know it. So it's funny, like, so, like, she was pregnant, and I was like, I knew she was pregnant. I could see she's pregnant, but it still wasn't real for me.
Yeah.
And then when my first daughter was born, and I remember holding her, I'm like, this huge tiny human being was like, we made this thing, like, this is the thing we made, and so, like, I remember just being, like, completely afraid to do anything. Like, I was like, you want me to change her diaper? What if I hurt her? Like, I'm just trying to, like, like, she's so small, like, and I'm like, I'm like, I'm kind of like a big guy, and, like, naturally, like, brute force is kind of my thing, so learning to be gentle was not to say I was like treating them like rag dolls, but, like, like, it was different. What I mean? It was very, very different. And so I was very afraid. And then I remember when my daughter called me, like, she said, dad, for the first time. Oh, well, then that's when it really became real. Like, okay, nope, I'm now responsible for these, for these girls. And I have to figure out what that looks like. I have to figure out what that means. And I have to figure out how to really, like, take care of them. And so I did what any, person usually does. They fall back on how they were raised. And I quickly realized some of the flaws, love my parents, but some of the flaws in our parenting styles. And I was like, I can't do that. Now my dad is capable of doing that, but I'm not my dad, and I can't do that. Like, I'm not able to do that. And I say some of it is learned skills, and some of it is practice. But, like, initially trying to do what my dad is trying to be very stern, very quickly, it didn't work. They just look at me and they laugh, and I'm just like, why are they not taking me seriously? I don't understand. I'm clearly angry. My tone says it, and they're just kind of laughing at me. I'm like, okay, this is not working. So I had to learn my own ways, and different styles. But when you bring them home that first night, and that first day, and you're just like, it's kind of crazy to think, like, the hospital just lets you leave, and because they do it all the time. They're like, people come in here, they have babies. Look, if everything's good, you'll be here max 72 hours, and then we're on to the next one, right? So, like, when they just, like, let us leave, and we're just like, I remember, like, we're in charge of this human being. I was like, they did everything in the hospital. Like, coming from changing the diaper, checking everything was good, like, doing all that. I was like, they did everything in the hospital. They expect to just send us home, and now we have to do this. We have to figure this out. I was like, this is insane. I was like, someone should be helping us. Send a nurse with us home, train us for a little bit, and then you go back to the hospital. But, like, just to be like, they wheel her out, you put her in the car, and they're like, all right, congratulations. And they walk back inside, and I'm like, so what do we do now? How do we do this? So there was a huge learning curve. There was a huge learning curve there. So,
yeah,
but an exciting one, I will say, but exciting.
Okay. So one of the things that I always talk about is, as we're raising our daughters, we're teaching them and guiding them, but then they're also teaching us, at the same time. And so as a father, what is something that your daughters have taught you that is like, all right, or should I say, either taught you or in some way changed you for the better? Like, you were this way, and then you had these daughters, and you're like, now you're interacting with them, it's like, now I turn into this other person, So give us an example of something that your daughters have taught you, or even just changed you for the better.
Patience. I will say, I was anger issues, right? So not extreme anger issues where I'm like putting holes in the wall, if you will, but just like very quickly, my natural reaction to when anything happened was to get angry. And so in the beginning, that's kind of what I would do, was just get angry. And I quickly realized, like, I couldn't keep getting mad at this innocent little girl who would look at me with these soul piercing eyes and just look and start crying and wondering why, like, why is he mad at me? I don't understand. You know what I mean? And so I remember just kind of sitting there thinking one day, like, to myself, like, I can't keep doing this. Like, I can't be the angry individual all the time. I can't just be all mad. Like, she does something and then I get mad and I'm like, she doesn't understand what she's doing. She doesn't know what she's doing is wrong. She's seen me do that same thing. She just doesn't know how to do it. And that is why she's doing the thing, though. She's doing it how her brain processed what I was doing. And so, I would get mad over, oh, you dropped a cup of water on the floor. Oh my goodness, what are you doing? Go sit down. I'll clean it up. Like, or you made a mess on the table. Like, I was so used to, in my brain, like, everything had to be perfect, and not realizing with kids, like, they're not going to be perfect, especially when they become toddlers. They're curious about everything. They want to touch everything. And so Eden right now is doing that exact thing. She wants to touch everything. And so, like, we have certain things in place where she can't access it, but every other thing was like, hey man, like, you're curious, go ahead, figure it out what it is. And that's what it is. But my first daughter, like, unfortunately, she didn't have that because we were still learning how to be parents ourselves. And so they taught me patience. And so now things happen and I don't get angry. I won't say I don't get angry anymore, but that initial reaction of like, oh, I'm just furious is like, no, I'm kind of like, okay, she doesn't understand. So like my oldest, I try to have conversations with her. I want to communicate with her and articulate to her, like, hey, this is why your action was wrong, or you shouldn't do that, and this is how maybe you should do it do this thing in the future. And then with my youngest, I let her do her thing, and like she's learning words. She's not going to understand me laying out a paragraph on why she can't have access to the cabinets. You know what I mean? So she's not going to understand that. So now I'm just kind of like, hey, like, she's just curious. This is just what babies do, because I've seen it with my oldest, and now I understand. But again, like, the main thing is patience. That is, I'm not perfect, but I could tell you right now, from the man that I was till now, it's almost like, man, you let everything slide. I'm like, no, there's very few things I let slide. It's just, you just got to get to know me more. So
yeah. Okay. All right. So before we jump into the next segment, I got two last questions, and these two questions I always ask, and more so for the new dads, right? And because I always want this podcast to be informational as well as entertaining, and so I always think about the dads that's listening, who actually the dads and the daughters, right? And just to kind of talk about our humanity as just being men. We don't always get it right. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes we get it wrong. And so my first question is, as a dad, thus far, what has been one of your greatest accomplishments that you think you've done, just as a father?
Ooh. This might seem small to others, and when I say this, you'll understand, but make my daughters laugh. That is truthfully one of the greatest accomplishments that I can personally say as a dad. One of the greatest accomplishments, especially for me, that I could say that I ever had, is making my daughters laugh and smile. And it's through just simple things that I do, that I could just trying to be funny, and seeing them laugh and smile, like a genuine, like, belly laugh and smile. That you can't replace those moments. And I know everybody has a phone, right? Everybody wants to take pictures and videos and whatever, but I can tell you right now, I've never taken a picture or a video of a genuine moment with me and my kids, because I want this forever in here. And so greatest accomplishment is just to see them both laugh and smile and just want to hang out with me. That is I couldn't ask for anything else.
Yeah. Okay. So on the flip side of that is, what would be something that I usually say your biggest regret, or and some people say regret just seems like so big, right? But not necessarily regret, but even something that looking back like, I probably could have did that a little different, or better, however you want to, look at it. So what is one of those moments that you probably had as a dad and look back on something that you did or said and was like, maybe I could have did that differently?
Teaching my oldest daughter that crying isn't bad. Like her getting upset and crying, and then me not being used to that high level of emotions, especially that young girls and women tend to have, other than men. Like it is the trying to. I remember I would, like, it's referring to me how I get angry. I remember I would be like, stop crying. You don't need to cry. That's not a reason to cry. And it wasn't until like 2 or 3 years ago that I realized, I was like, me telling her that, she's now believed that if she starts crying, like, she shouldn't be crying, and there's something wrong with her for crying. And it was a moment I had where I remember I was like, you just go to your room. And she went to her room and she went under her bed and she's bawling her eyes out. And I come over there and because I've taken a deep breath, and I come in and I say, hey, come on out. And she's just like, no, she doesn't want to come to me. She doesn't want to see me at all. And like, that hurts. Like that legitimately hurts when your kid is upset and you're the cause of that. But like, you also want to comfort them, be like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. Come here. And they don't want nothing to do with you. And so that hurt me to the core, to the point where I was like, I never want her to not feel comfortable when she's upset and vulnerable, like, to still not want nothing to do with dad. And so I would say that would be the biggest, truthfully, regret and failures as a dad that I've had, is not realizing sooner that it's okay to cry. And, kids, especially boy or girl, they're going to cry. And that's just what they're going to do, especially when they're young. So I wish I could go back and slap, younger me into reality and be like, shame on you, fix it. But one thing we won't get back in this life is time. So
right. All right. Good stuff. So we're going to jump into the next segment of the podcast, which is the getting to the core segment. And it's based off of the ebook, The Core Four, which is the core for the 4 core values that every daughter should get from her father, which I wrote to my listeners. You can get your copy of The Core Four at ebooksbyejames.com. Again, that's ebooksbyejames.com. And so, crew, we talk about the core 4 in the book. And so those core 4 values that I believe that every daughter should get from her father is guidance, affirmation, love and affection, and protection. And so I sent you a copy so you have a chance to read over it. So of those 4, what would be the one that probably stands out? Because I know they're all important, but what would be the one that's probably stands out the most to you? It's like, you know what, this one right here is something that I really want to give to my daughters.
So, I was trying to practice. I was trying to, like, not necessarily practice, but plan for this question. And as I was reading through it, I was like, man, this is good too. Man, this one is really good too. And so, I boiled it down between love and affection and affirmation. And if I had to choose, like, if I had, like, hey, gun to head, I have to choose which one, I would have to say love and affection. And, so I'm a man, obviously. And, when it comes to men, we I think where we fail at sometimes when especially raising sons is teaching them love and affection, but how men do it, if that makes sense, right? So like as a man, you have to have, you can give love and affection to your daughter, but you also have to give love and affection to your son. And why that's important, why I chose that, coming back here full circle now, is there's parts where I think my dad, or I don't at least remember my dad teaching me that love and affection, or me grasping what that looked like until later. It was almost too late, if you will, in life. And so now fast forward, and all I want to do is teach my girls that, like, hey, like, this is what love from your dad looks like. And, I may not have gotten it the way that I pictured I should have gotten that love and affection, and that teaching that, being taught that. But like for my girls, I just want at the end of the day, I want them to know I love them, and I want them to know that I will do anything for them. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that say they'll do anything for their kids, but then the rubber meets the road, and they're like, maybe not that.
Yeah.
But I can tell you right now, there's nothing in this world that I wouldn't do. There's nothing in this world and outside this world that I wouldn't do for my kids. And I've been in Afghanistan. So when I say there's nothing in this world that I wouldn't do for my girls, I wholeheartedly mean it. And I bring up Afghanistan because I remember seeing U.S. blowing up something in Afghanistan, and I'm thinking to myself, like, that's kind of messed up, in its own way, right? I won't get into it, the weeds of it, but like, like, dang, like those are lost lives right there. But fast forward to now, and I can tell you right now, if it came down to someone said, hey, well, it's either your girls or you got to blow up that, you got to, press the button. I'm pressing the button. There's not a moment. There's not a hesitation. There's not thinking about it. No, I'm pressing the button. And I say that to kind of really signify, like, to understand, like, the willingness that I would go to hell and back for my girls. And it's not cliche. It's not me just saying it. Like, I wholeheartedly mean it. I would do anything for them. So love and affection, as long as they just know that dad loves them and he always loves us. And whether I'm here or I'm not here, knowing that I love them and everything I do is for them. I tell people all the time, I wake up, I put my uniform on for them. The moment they are no longer in my life for whatever reason, well, then I'm taking that. I'm walking away. I don't have a reason. I don't have a purpose. They are my purpose. My purpose in life is to be a dad. Everybody else have their purpose. They're driven. They're doing this and that. Like, no, my purpose in life, I wholeheartedly believe, is to be a dad, and I want to be great at it. And I want my girls to know that dad loves them from the bottom of his heart. So.
All right. Last question. So we talked about the 4 core values, but if there could be a 5th value that you can add, what would that be?
Presence. And I know it was a quick answer. But I actually my last episode I just released, I was talking about it, and presence is essential, right? And just being there means something, right? Just being there means something. So in my video, I talked about how my dad, he's a pilot and he flies for Southwest. And when I was younger, he worked for different airline, and he was gone 2.5 to 3 weeks out of the month. At any given month, he was gone. So I played basketball in high school, and my brother played football. And I remember, I can tell you he was there more than I can tell you about the times he wasn't there. Like, I barely even remember the times he wasn't there. I remember all the times he was. So it was one of those moments where I'm at the game, and the game's getting ready to start, and we did our warm-ups, and I'm like, oh man, are my parents? I thought my dad's mentioned he might come, or whatever the case might be, especially away games. And then it's that moment where you're they know they can see you and they're looking at you, and then you kind of look up and you make eye contact, and everything changes. Everything, like the mood, you were upset, you were sad. It doesn't make, you could have been arguing with your parents that day. Like I could have been in an argument with my parents that day, and then they showed up to my game to watch me, showed up. And that to me meant everything to me. It meant the world to me just to see that regardless of what he had going on, regardless, I know he was busy, regardless of what he was doing, he took time out of his evening to come see me play. And then he would do the same thing for my brother. And that, when you have that, you take it for granted. But when you don't have it, you start to realize, like, you're like, people who take it for granted are just like, I don't know what the big deal is. My dad shows up to every game. It's like, okay, yeah, but some people don't have that.
Right.
And so it clicked for me when I was in AIT, which is advanced individual training in the military. So after basic training, you go to AIT, which is the training to learn whatever job you're going to do within the military. And it's at graduation, and my parents weren't able to come. And I was in South Carolina. My parents were able to come, but there were other families and other people who had their family members there to see them walk the stage and receive their diploma of such, and say like, hey, you are now certified in this thing. And I remember for my first MOS in the Army, they weren't there. The feeling of kind of just sadness of like, it doesn't feel like I did anything, and it didn't feel like anything. But then my second MOS, my dad showed up, and I can remember walking on the stage, looking out and seeing him, and immediately was like, this is worth it. Everything I did was worth it. To see him clap and be happy for me, and say, and in the end be like, hey, I'm proud of you. It was worth it. And it all boils down to presence. So sorry, I know I can get long-winded, but it just means it means so much to me. It's like, when it comes to being a father, like, presence it's essential. And it's one of those things where it's like, if it means so much. Like, if you only knew what it meant to your kids when you show up.
Yeah.
That's it. So
yeah, and I know it, like, and I know it's important, and I know, like, on Facebook and on social media, they had a little clip. Sometimes they show it when exactly like you said, when the kids go and see their parents. And I recently had a similar situation. Not necessarily my daughter. My daughter's 21. Well, my daughter's finna be 21, so she's a young adult. But my two oldest sons, of course, they have daughters, and so I think it was just like last week. My son was like, he had to do something. He was like, hey, are you available to go pick my granddaughter up from school? And I'm like, yeah, I'll go get her, which usually, I think I probably only picked her up maybe once before, and usually he picks her up from school every day. And so I go to pick her up, and they're like, it's like a little, I should say, like a little waiting area where the kids are waiting at, but it's all glass, so you can see them, they can see you. And I remember walking up to the glass, and I could see my granddaughter in there. She's kind of just sitting there with her head down, and then she looks up to see me, and she like jumps. She's like, "Granddad," and gets all excited. And her teacher starts smiling. She's like, "That's my granddad." And she opens the door so she can come out. But it was that moment, like you said, you don't realize how much that means, not only to them, but even to you, see that they're still excited. Because even going back to, like you said, earlier with the situation with your daughter, when it's like she don't want nothing to do with you, and you like, that hurts. On the other side of that, when you like those little moments, like, she's actually happy to see me. You know what I mean? It's like she doesn't take that for granted. Like, oh, grandpa's here. You know what I mean? But yeah, so it's that same thing. So I definitely understand. That presence and those little moments definitely mean a lot. And to all my listeners, I know we mentioned it earlier. If you haven't gone to Mediocre Dads and check it out, number one, check it out because it's a good podcast, first of all. But then make sure you check out the episode that I was on. And I think we definitely had a great conversation on there. So make sure that you guys go check out Mediocre Dads and check out that episode. So, Q, before we get out of here, I want you to have the last word, right? I want you to have the last word. I want you to leave us with however you feel, a word of inspiration, motivation, however it is, maybe even something for the fathers that may be listening, or even for the daughters, a word of advice, or just something, however you feel to leave us with something. So I'll let you have the last word. Definitely want you to tell us where we can find, follow you and find your social media, and definitely find out more about Mediocre Dads and all of those things. So I'll give you a couple seconds to think about that. While you're thinking about it, to my listeners, make sure you guys are definitely checking us out at all of our websites, the different websites and platforms that we have. As we definitely have our listening platforms on wherever you listen to the podcast, but definitely check us out on our official website, which is the dealhealfulfill.org. Which is my personal website, because as you guys know, I am a speaker, I'm an author, as well as a podcaster. And my mission in life is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from your pain, and to fulfill your purpose. And so you can go to dealhealfulfill.org to find out more about me and what I have got going on, as well as go to Deal to Heal Tees. That's Deal, the number 2, healtees.com for our inspirational t-shirt line. And also our podcast merch, our official podcast t-shirts are there. And last but not least, you go to ebooksbyejames.com, where you can get your copy of the Core 4, which is the Core 4 values that every daughter should get from her father, as well as the other ebooks that we have there. We also have an ebook called From Males to Men, which is a male mentoring book. So I didn't forget about the sons while I was talking about the daughters. So I got something for both of them there, as well as some other things. So you can go to ebooksbyejames.com in order to check that out. Also, make sure that you guys subscribe to our text line. Subscribe to the number, text the word subscribe to the number 866-326-0730 to receive text messages about new episodes, book release, and also event information about different events that we have going on. And also, one of the things I've been blessed to be a part of is a organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops every quarter of the year about forgiveness. We talk about what it is, what it's not, what it means to forgive, who is this for, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, just everything surrounding forgiveness we talk about. I think it's a very important topic for us to learn about. And it's virtual, so you can watch it anytime at home when we have it, and it's absolutely free. So you guys can go to Eventbrite to register for that. Go to Eventbrite and look up Forgiveness Workshop, or go to forgivenessmission.com in order to check that out. Last but not least, I told you guys that I will tell you how you can win $100 from the podcast. To win $100 from the podcast, you want to join our super subscriber contest. What does that mean? That means you must first subscribe to our YouTube page, to our Facebook page, and to our podcast on Spotify. Then text the word WIN, W-I-N, to the number 866-326-0730 to qualify to win $100. The contest is random and is ongoing, so once you're in, you can always win. Again, just text the word W-I-N, WIN, to the number 866-326-0730 to qualify to win. And make sure when you text the word WIN, you also send your information, your contact information, your name, your email address, and your phone number, because people are texting the word WIN and you don't give us any information, so we don't even know how to contact you if you are a winner. So make sure when you text the word WIN, you also include your contact information. So that being said, again, Q, thank you so very much for being on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your expertise, and we definitely appreciate you being on. And of course, I appreciate you having me on your podcast as well with my listeners. Again, I ask you guys to make sure you go check out Mediocre Dads. I think it's an awesome platform. And that being said, I want you to have the last word. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hey, if y'all ain't gonna text the win, I might just text there so I can get $100 myself. I drive a diesel truck, so gas is not cheap. But no, I appreciate one. Thank you for having me on. I do appreciate it. Like I said, this is a big deal for me and mediocre dads as I branch out and get with other podcasters and just have these conversations, especially this conversation, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think it's great. You said it on my show, like it just has to be like you're two men talking about being dads and the importance of dads. So it's great that we were able to link up. But I will say to find me, I'm just going to start with where to find me. So on Instagram, it's mediocre dads. On Facebook, it's mediocre dads. And YouTube, it's mediocre dads. Everything is mediocre dads. I promise. If you put in mediocre dads, I will come up. I will show up. I'll pop up there, and boom, I'm there. You can listen and or watch any of my episodes that are out currently. I put an episode out every Monday at 10. I'm going to try to put out maybe like 2 episodes a week if I can. As I said, I'm active duty military, so I'm still at to the United States Army. And that is my priority in life. So while the podcasting is great and fun, I do still have a job that's very important to me that provides for me and my family. That being said, mediocre dads is ever growing and I want it to grow, but I can't do it on my own. Right. I wish I had, thousands of dollars where I could just pour into this and make things happen. But I don't have that. So if anybody is willing to donate to really help mediocre dads grow, you can go on to my Instagram or my Facebook or anything and click on my link tree. And in my link tree, there's going to be a link for it's called Buy Me a Coffee. And with that, it allows you to donate. Essentially, it's the idea behind it is, you're buying me a cup of coffee, if you will, and it's donating to the show, so we can bring more content to you, add some more stuff, and to make it look, more appealing to the eye, if you will, and really bolster up our channel to get more content out to you guys. So if you're feeling like you want to do that, you want to donate, just click on my Instagram, go to the bio in that link tree. You'll find everything you need, and that's related to mediocre dads. That being said, I want to leave something with you guys that it's on my heart, and I feel very compelled to share it with you. So it'll be 2 things. The first thing is to my fathers, to my men out there, suicide is a thing in which we experience, those thoughts, the ideations, those mental illness, we experience it. We keep it in, and we don't share it. We don't talk about it because as men, we shouldn't be weak. Right. And that's what we've always heard our entire life. We shouldn't be weak. And I bring this up. I just had a friend that I worked with, unfortunately, who just committed suicide, and he left behind his wife and his 2 kids, and one of them, he did have a daughter. And it's very hard, especially in the military, because when a service member takes their life, and you start to think to yourself, like, okay, where did I let this person down? And he had some stuff going on in the military that's not important, but still, that impacted, that ultimately led him to led him to that decision. And so I say that because I want my men to understand, my dads to understand that, like, you have a purpose, you have a reason to be on this earth. And if nothing else, it's your kids. You pour everything into your kids to give you that purpose and that direction. And just to keep you on the straight and narrow. And please, if you're feeling that anyway, talk to somebody, reach out to somebody, reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, message me. I have no problem talking to people and leading you or pointing you in the right direction. I'm by no forms of fashion a trained counselor, but I am great at listening. And and if you just need someone to listen, to, I'm all for it. If that means that you're not going to take your life, I will listen to you for over an hour. I promise you. My wife, my kids, they understand. I will listen. And so that's a big deal to me. And especially in the military community, is just suicide is not worth it. Talk to somebody, seek help, talk to your friends, talk to people you care about, talk to E. I'm sure Deal to Heal, especially that is, I know within that podcast, that's what it's about, right? You want to heal.
Yeah.
And so and so please talk to somebody. I don't know who it is for you, what that looks like, but just please talk to somebody. And then finally, I will say everything in my life happened for a reason. And I am fortunate to be where I am because by the grace of God. And I wake up every morning and I thank him for everything that he's done. He's blessed me with in this world. And I remember 5 or 6 years ago praying for everything that I have now. And it might sound ridiculous in some aspects or some shape or form, like, oh, you were praying for all this. I was praying for it. Believe me, I was praying about being able to own my own house. I was praying about being able to have things and have kids and that they love me and taking care of them. I was praying about all these things and I have it. And I'm in that moment now. And instead of looking so hyper focused on the future, I'm focused now because this is the moment now. And I want to be present for it. But anyway, my main point is I have everything I have because by the grace of God, and I wouldn't be here without him, and I wouldn't be able to do the things that I do without him. So that's all I got. Appreciate you. Thank you for having me on. Again, I'm Q with Mediocre Dads.
No problem. No problem. To all my listeners, we can't end it no better than that. Also, I'll just throw this in here right quick. Make sure you guys do go check out the Deal to Heal podcast, right? Because suicide is one of the topics that we definitely talk about. And I definitely talk about my experience of having suicidal ideations and, depression and all of that. So make sure you guys go check out the Deal to Heal podcast, as well as the Mediocre Dad podcast. And thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where we believe that the relationship between the dad and his daughter is one of the most important relationships in a young woman's life. And so make sure that you guys continue to follow us, continue to listen, and don't keep it to yourself, but share with someone else. Let them know that the Girl Dad Discussions podcast is on the air. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our podcast on all your podcast listening platforms. Also, don't keep it to yourself, but share it with someone else that the Girl Dad Discussions podcast is on the air. Until next time, be blessed.